Welcome to Strip Coverlet, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I am Adrian Ford, and we are here for episode 13, 14, 15, something of a 25-ish part series as we journey a couple chapters at a time through Holly by Stephen King. And I have to admit, I'm feeling saucy today. I'm feeling spicy today. I've got a little bit more P and V in me than normal, perhaps. Um, and we're just gonna have an episode, guys. There's just a couple of us here, so no worries. What happened? So what happened? Well, we've got a so what happened portion, we've got a lit crit portion, and we've got a writer's corner portion of the video where we will talk about a little bit of craft that we can extract from these pair of chapters. So what happened in these two chapters? Well, Barbara and Olivia stuff. That's where we start, Barbara and Olivia stuff, and Maria's there, but just because. Olivia mentions that Emily Harris hated Jorge because he wasn't white. Or was it because he was gay? Olivia is old, and they are basically seemingly the same thing to her, and we'll get back to this point later. Also, Olivia, brings up the fact that Jorge was gay as if she had never known a gay person before. So there's that. Also, Barbara has to write an essay about her poetry because she might make the short list for the short list poetry thing with the, you know, you know what it is. Cut to Holly visiting one of the golden oldie guys who has a six pack and long hair. And Holly is creeped out by him, probably because she had a dream and he reminds her of someone she used to know or something. Who knows, right? But Holly is creeped out, and she's creeped out by his younger wife as well, because step three, profit. She gets contact info on the other guys and sends Barbara a pic that includes Carrie and incidentally probably includes Roddy as well. I don't remember if that's said in there, if it's made specific, but I think the picture includes Roddy as well, and that's going to come back. Maybe. Who knows at this point? Speaking of Barbara, she is in an existentialist rage. Oh, I'm sorry, did I say existentialist rage? No, she's going through a pretentious rage. And she writes her essay while naked and hyperventilating, because why wouldn't you? Also, while she's naked, Stephen King makes sure to tell us that she's glowing. Because I don't know if you've realized this yet, but Stephen King has to write every single one of the awkward things that black people say they wish white people would stop saying to them. We're probably 20 or 30 pages away from Marie asking Barbara if she can touch her hair. That's where we are. So that's what happened in this pair of chapters. What are we talking about from a lit crit portion? Well, I should have had my book open. I did not. I'm a little thrown off. I'm spicy today. We get this that I think is a good place to start discussion. On page 258, quote, "The wider world takes no notice." This is when Olivia is telling Barbara about making the short list or the medium list, and that being in publication. The wider world takes no notice. If you think of literature as a town, then those who read and write poetry are the poor relations who live in shanties across the tracks. This is undoubtedly true. It is sad, but it is true. Take it from a guy who has made around 400 videos or so on the topic of poetry and put them on the interwebs. It is a sad reality that poetry is so micro pigeonholed, but we need not look to poetry for that type of existence. Literature in general is dead. In fact, short stories may be in a worse place even than poetry. Now, a lot of times you get, I don't know if it works this way anymore or not, but a decade ago, um, it was the thing that if you had an interesting short story someplace, you might get a letter or an email from an agent asking you if you had a few chapters of a novel written up, and you would say yes. And then, while waiting for that agent to ask for them, even if you didn't have them, you would write them because this could be an opportunity for you. I don't know if it works that way anymore or not, but literature, the place of literature in the world in general, is very sad. Um, just thought I'd get on a soapbox there, someplace where Stephen King and I can maybe see eye to eye. Stephen King's not watching this, but if he were, the next note that I have takes place on 259. I want you to remember that this chapter is written to take place. It has a date. It's literally dated May 19th, 2021. This is Olivia speaking to Barbara about Jorge in his place as a gay man. It's telling her, quote, gay as gay could be. Attitudes about that were a little less tolerant 10 years ago. I'm sorry, what? Attitudes about that in an English literature department were less tolerant in 2011? No, they weren't. Stephen, what are you talking about? Where have you been? This is another example. We have so many examples in this book of the fact that Stephen King does not live in the real world. Stephen King is not like other boys. Stephen King lives on a different planet which must be sculpted by the nightly news. It is absolutely insane, the things that he is saying in this book. And we've got a couple more of those in this chapter. But one of those things happens on the very next page, page 260. I'm just going to read it. This is Olivia speaking to Barbara, starting with Olivia's quote. But there was at least one member of the faculty who didn't like him at all, maybe even loathed him. I believe if she had been department chairman instead of Rosalind Burkhart, she would have found some way to toss him out on his ear. Emily Harris, Barbara says. Olivia gives Barbara a sour intern smile that's very unlike her usual one. None other. Now remember, Olivia is telling Barbara this because Jorge is gay. She's talking about how Emily doesn't like Jorge because he's gay. Olivia gives Barbara a sour intern smile that's unlike her usual one. None other. I don't think she has much use for people who aren't white. Now, hating people because of their sexuality and hating people because of their race or ethnicity, these two things are not mutually exclusive, that's to be sure. But Stephen King is treating these things as if they are just transposal, like gay, ethnic. Who's to know the difference? Who's to know the difference? It's almost as if what's going on here is that Stephen King is tempted to suggest that white and not gay are the same thing, in the same way that not white and gay are the same thing. As if Stephen King is just prescribing people's beliefs based on an immutable characteristic. As if Stephen King knows that because you are X, Y, or Z, you have these cognitive presets. Is there a word for that? Golly, I think there is. I think there is a word for that, saying that because you were born with a certain type of melanin, your mind is a certain way. There's a word for that. Golly, I can't remember what it is. Stephen, do you? It's almost as if Stephen King is saying that because someone is born with a certain sexuality, there are certain things they definitely think. I, I think there's a word for that. I just can't put my tongue on it. Now I want to step to something that is truly horrifying. The first thing in this book, which is truly horrifying, my number 4 point here, we have. I'm going to be pretentious in this. I'm going to absolutely 100% be pretentious here, and maybe you'll give me some leeway for this. We have Barbara here, who is, and look, I don't really call out cliches a whole lot in these series when going through writer's notes, right? Because Stephen King is not exactly, and I don't say this to be demeaning, Stephen King is a storyteller more than a writer. Writers use the craft, storytellers care about your emotions in the thrall of things more than they care about which words they hand pick, right? I think Stephen King would admit to that. Um, so he's a storyteller, not a writer. So I don't really point out cliches when he uses them. But, he is not using them here. This is not happening in narration. We have here Barbara. Barbara, who is described as something of a poetic genius, a savant in the poetics, the Poetica. One of the quotes that we have from Barbara in this section, in this chapter, she says to Olivia, when Olivia has said, "Yeah, this is going to be printed. Your name will be printed on the short list." She says, "Well, cat's out of the bag." That's a cliche. On the very next page, when it is expressed to her that she has to come up with this essay, she says, "I'll put my thinking cap on." Now, do people talk this way? Absolutely. People talk in cliches all the time. Barbara is young, so Barbara would be more prone to using a cliche perhaps than a more experienced writer. However, Barbara is being described as something of a poetic savant. I've known poetic savants. I've known these people who poetry spills from them. They don't speak in cliche. They don't even think in cliche. These people, more so than anyone, like, there's some weird folks out there, especially when you get into the walls of academe. There are some strange folk out there that talk in real funny manners. The poetic geniuses, whole different breed of weirdo. It's not that they do not speak in cliche. They do not think in cliche. So I'm just going to be pretentious and put that out there and say that this is bad writing here. The next thing I have to talk about here, and I don't want to do this. I don't want to make this point on my channel. I don't want to make these points in general. We have Holly at this older gentleman's house. He's giving her the creeps. He's ripped. He's old. He's slick. He's exuberant. He's explaining things to her about his past. He says, "Gosh, this takes me back. Most of these guys are gone. When I started with the oldies, I was teaching at Bell College, living downtown and day trading on the side. Now I'm in the investment business full time, and as you can see, business has been good. He sweeps his arm around, presumably indicating, presumably, the kitchen and its high priced appliances, the backyard pool, perhaps even the younger wife, who's not quite young enough to be called a trophy wife. Holly gives him credit for that. Trump is an idiot, but I'm glad he's gone. Regular people do not make this transition. Now, this guy goes on to explain that Trump was good for the stock market, but I'm glad he's gone. Real people don't talk this way. Real people don't say, we'll take it to the other extreme today. Joe Biden, not very popular, right? I'm not saying that. You can turn on the television to any channel you want. Joe Biden's not very popular. People aren't going to look at you and say, I really made a lot of money. It's a shame Joe Biden's an idiot. I'm sorry, what? How did we get that transition? Real people don't talk this way. Stephen King does not live in the real world. What is happening here? This is wild. This is absolutely insane stuff. Maybe I'm delusional. I don't think Stephen King used to write this way. Maybe I'm delusional, but I think that Stephen King is gone. The guy who wrote The Shining is gone. The guy who wrote It isn't coming through that door, right? Something is weird going on here. And then the final note I have for the Lit Crit, just sort of talking about the story stuff here. We have Barbara, who is going through her pretentious existentialist crisis. And she is supposed to be writing this essay, and this essay is kicking her butt. Finally, she gets to this point. I write poetry because without it, I am a dead engine. She pauses only for a moment, then adds that I should be asked to write an essay about my poetry after sending so much of it to you is idiotic. My poetry is my essay. What an edgy girl. I really did think this. I thought that fairy tale was supposed to be teen literature, was supposed to be the young adult novel from Stephen King. This reads. There was a book called like Blood for Water, Blood and Chocolate, maybe Blood and Chocolate, I think. And I had to read it for my YA literature class in college. And I mean, just the most bleeding heart thing you could ever hope to read. This is worse than that. That was straight up written to be young adult literature. I don't think that this is. Now, moving on to the writer's notes, the writer's corner notes. What can we learn from old Stevie King here? Let's start here on page 263 with quite possibly the worst sentence I've ever read. Kids bowl for help. I can't even read it. Kids bowl for health. Reads the sign over the group shots of the school children who came here to bowl in the days before COVID, made an end to such outings. I mean, for a single comma, Kids Bowl for Health reads the sign over the group shots of the school children who came here to bowl in the days before COVID, made an end to such outings. Obviously, this sentence is so oddly constructed because Stephen King wanted to begin this chapter with Kids Bowl for Health, all in caps. I get it. And I'm going to be real honest. I don't know how to rewrite that sentence, but it's a bad one. Kids Bowl for Health reads the sign over the top of the shots of the school children who came here to bowl in the days before COVID made an end to such outings. That's just a bad sentence. I don't care. I'm not going to qualify it. I don't care. The next one. Here's the okay. I am going to qualify it. Here's the most aggravating part of that. Stephen King is usually a pretty clean writer. Like, say what you will about the subject matter he deals with. Say what you will about the characters that he employs. Say what you will about the dialogue that's not always great. Say what you will about questionable racism that has kind of gone through his entire canon. I'm just putting it out there. I'm just putting it out there, okay? Say what you will about any of that. He's normally pretty clean on the page. You understand what's going on. Normally, Stephen King's sentences are crisp. Stephen King's sentences are things that you can read and follow along. That is very important to a storyteller, not a writer. Writers don't care about you in that fashion. James Joyce says you can take a hike. He doesn't care. He's got his precise things going on in his writerdom. He's picked all of these things, right? Stephen King's not normally like this. Something weird is going on. Stephen King has been body snatched. On page 264, this is something that this isn't. I'm not salty about this the way I have been this whole video. This is something that if I were Stephen King's editor, I would have pointed to and said, "You can spruce this up. This is something you can do. You're doing, but you could do better." On 264, we get this. Holly thinks a new millionaire parks and watches a man on a riding mower clip the. A new millionaire parks and watches a man on a riding mower clip the clipperd's grass. I am Jack's smirking sense of self-esteem. I am Jack's. I am Jack's. Where is that? Here we have Fight Club. I'm gonna flip through and not find any. Repeated in this novel, if you have not read it, our main character lives in an abandoned house. The abandoned house has all of these Reader's Digests in the basement. And the Reader's Digest, I am reading Reader's Digest in the kitchen. I am totally nonplussed. The Reader's Digest keep having articles from Jack's something. I am Jack's smirking revenge. I am Jack's colon. I am Jack's X, Y, and Z. Much, perhaps, to Chuck Palahniuk's detriment, and we get this ironically in Fight Club, he's clever. Chuck Palahniuk is very clever with that employment. We keep upping the ante with the I am Jack's mentions. Stephen King keeps putting these Holly thinks a new millionaire X, Y, and Z, but he isn't clever with it. He's not building on anything with it. It's just Holly thinking, sure am a millionaire now. Look how silly it is me doing these normal people stuffs. How great am I, a millionaire, but I'm sitting here watching some guy on a riding mower. Who cares? You're not being clever with it. Clever is what that type of thing calls for. And then my final observation here is just a small one. On that same page, she takes her iPad. It has the biggest screen for the picture she wants to show Clippard. He walks around the house, pausing to peek into a dining room with a table that looks long enough to seat a football team, parentheses, or a bowling league, in parentheses, period. You don't need those parentheses there. What are the parentheses doing? What work are the parentheses doing here? One of the things that is craft level, that writer level, not storyteller stuff. I understand Stephen King's a storyteller, not a writer as much. But one thing you have to do is have pity upon the reader. This is one of the 8 rules, I think it is, from Kurt Vonnegut. Have pity on the reader. You have to make his or her work as easy as possible. Being as easy as possible, in my opinion, one of the things with that is having as few punctuation marks on the page as possible, because punctuation marks break what is his name? A Vivid and Continuous Dream, The Art of Fiction, John, I can't find it. Anyway, The Art of Fiction, great book. You should read it if you're a writer. Fiction is what the author of that calls a vivid and continuous dream. Punctuation, commas, never use a colon, never use a semicolon, never use a parentheses just in the writing, because you don't have to, because no one speaks in colons or semicolons or parentheses. You don't need those things. This isn't an essay for your English class. That is all I have for this video. If you enjoy or appreciate what I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, literature is the only thing that I talk about on this channel, dropping 4, 5, 6, 7, sometimes more videos. I am on 8 or 9 months straight of daily uploads. So join along for that roller coaster. There's poetry every Mondays, and I hope to have you back for the next one.